Hi, Janann.
Hi, Kaylee. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome back to the Layover Live. We have an amazing episode planned for today. So, Janann, let's tell everybody what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. So it is National Women's Month when we are recording this. So we are doing an episode with some amazing, smart women who get stuff done in our industry. But I do just want to say that while, the episode is, raising up women in our industry, I think that there's a lot of takeaways for anyone listening to this. I think we all have a role to play no matter, who you are. There is someone who looks up to you, whether that be a daughter, a sister, a niece, a cousin. We all have a role to play in highlighting the women in our life to, champion them to be successful in whatever they decide to pursue in the future. And, I'm really excited to, get some insight from these women I know we look up to. So it's a really, really special episode near and dear to our hearts. So I don't want to take too much time talking about it. Should we just get into it?
Let's get into it.
Well, we're so excited to be joined today by some smart women who get stuff done in our industry. So we'll go ahead and pass them the floor and do some introductions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy Hazy Roberts. I'm with Travel Santa Ana, President and CEO.
Kristen?
And I am Kristen Reynolds, President and CEO of Choose Chicago. I've been in my role for about 10 months now. And prior to that, I was President and CEO of Discover Long Island for 10 years.
Hi, everyone. Sophia Hyder-Hawk, Chief Impact Officer at Destinations International. And I've been with DI for 4 years now.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. March is International Women's Month, so we wanted to invite some amazing women in the industry to come and talk with us about their career journeys and their hope for the future for women in the industry, as well as hearing some inspiring stories along the way. So we mentioned the group, the Smart Women Who Get Stuff Done. Can you guys give us a little, background on what that group is and maybe how you got started in it? Whoever wants to start first.
I can go first because I think I was invited actually by Kristen. So Smart Women Who Get Stuff Done, I think, is just an opportunity for women within the industry to celebrate each other and to lift each other up and to kind of be the soundboard for each other when we're facing challenges within the industry and within our careers. So it's a group that has evolved from, I think, a few friends kind of getting together for a happy hour during a conference and then recognizing the need to have a women-focused opportunity to have that empowerment.
I love this group because I think it started, like Wendy said, as a very small group of women when there were very few women, particularly in leadership positions in our industry. A lot of women in the industry, but when it came to the top leadership positions, there wasn't a lot of representation. And so it was kind of stemmed from that camaraderie. And it's really amazing to see how much it's grown. When you go to the conferences now, we can barely fit in the room, and we certainly barely fit in the group picture anymore, because it's been women really bringing other women in the industry into the fold and reaching out and lifting each other up. And that's been the most impactful part of this group for me. And I'm honored to be a part of it. And I thank, Tammy and Martha and the people that were the first ones to lay the groundwork. Maura.
I have to say what's exciting, remembering what we did in Chicago for this group. We were over 500 women strong, which was just really encouraging and really exciting to see the growth of this group. So I'm just grateful to also be a part of it as well.
I know I was very lucky to start my career working under Cheryl Kilday, who is a very strong woman in this industry. And I had heard rumblings of this group, but I actually got to meet in the room in Chicago with everyone. And it was just like, I remember getting chills, just like being surrounded by all these people that, I looked up to and I want to like grow to be like one day, and just kind of hear, how it's evolved over time, and just, how powerful we are in this industry. And it was really a, inspiring moment. And with that, did you guys have any, people in your career that stood out to you, whether as mentors or, people you looked up to guidance for in this industry or outside this industry who helped shape, your path?
Kristen,
Yeah,
you
I
want to
mean,
take this one
yeah,
first?
sure. So sure. Again, I just kind of mentioned the Moras and the Tammys and the Marthas that they really did kind of pave the way. And I do think it's important, to your point, Jan, to see other women in the roles and make you believe. And I even had several women come up to me in Chicago because I had just taken over as CEO at the time, and to have young women come up to me and say, "Wow, I really see you in the position now. I feel like there might be a pathway for me that I had never considered." That is the greatest um, gift and responsibility. I also, again, there was a time in our career, Wendy, when we were coming up together
Mm-hmm.
on the board of PRSA, Travel and Tourism. We were all a bunch of PR girls, right? And there wasn't a lot of women CEO representation. But where I lived in Arizona, Rachel Sacco, who was still in her CEO position, she was and she continues to be an inspiration. And I think I've had the privilege of learning from women leaders that I want to emulate, and from women leaders that I don't want to emulate as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we've all gone through that, especially maybe in that Gen X stage when it was a little bit of a tougher climate, of feeling a certain way and not wanting to make somebody else feel the way that you felt. It's actually great to go through that because it makes you more cognizant of your actions with other women as well. So
Yeah, I have to agree with Kristen. I was reflecting on this question before the interview, and it was pretty much that. I was more influenced by how I didn't want to lead than an example of how one should lead. And to Kristen's point, starting out in PR, it's inspiring to see now going back to PRSA, Travel and Tourism. I think there's 8 of us who started out as PR in the DMO world and are now president CEOs. From Tanya at Visit Albuquerque to Kristen at, the second largest tourism organization. So it's inspiring to see my peers making that journey and being in that leadership, because like to Kristen's point, when we were starting out 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was predominantly men.
Mhm.
And so now you have look across like Seattle, Boston, Chicago, Orlando, San Francisco, all the big cities have women now as leaders.
That's so true. And I think about, I was reflecting on this question when I saw it, and I've taken a different angle and different career path. I'll take it back a little further. I'd say the first person that has always inspired me has been my mom. She passed 10 years ago, but her story of coming to the United States, how she did when she did, was always a testament of strength of a female, and what they can do with the will that they have. And then my first career used to be in international development work. So I worked a lot of different countries. And I also look at the strength of women around the world, and the fact that there are a lot of male leaders around the world too. And I noticed those two, I guess it's a big dichotomy. Coming into this industry, I had my own business before in the travel and tourism industry, and then 4 years at DI. I think what's really special to see is exactly what you both have said, Wendy and Kristen, is the power of female leadership, and the strength that you both bring, but also what our CEOs who are female have brought. I think about our board leadership, and then we have, it's an interesting piece because over the 100 years that DI has been in existence, we've had 7 female leaders, which is, we have some work to do. But what's really exciting now is how we're ensuring that there is that aspect of inclusion of women and the perspectives to make sure that we're elevating women into these roles. And then lastly, what I'll say, and Dawn is very excited about this, is that our the C-suite, we're 3 women and Dawn. And he's very excited about that because it's very empowering, but it just shows it's a testament to women and leadership and what we can accomplish together.
Well, and I'd like to add one thing also is that the leaders typically were coming from hotel sales backgrounds. And so now you're seeing leadership coming in from the public relations aspect, which, you know, I know that our overall job is to sell a city, but it's through storytelling, and the PR perspective brings something unique to that role.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point, Wendy, because that it shows how the industry has shifted. That it was all about heads and beds and sales. But as things moved forward and as funding became more challenging and as advocacy became more important, that communications is really the top skill, because you could have the greatest sales team, you could be having the greatest results, but if you're not communicating them to your stakeholders, to your residents, and that was just with as media took over. And again, a couple other names that were on that PRSA Travel and Tourism Board, Wendy, Vicky Isley, Donna O'Daniels. It's great. I mean, it's really been a journey to see everyone come through that communications career path into the leadership roles.
Sophia, I love that you shouted out your mom there, and 100% agree. My mom was also a huge inspiration for me, and now that I have my own daughter, I am striving every day to be a great influence on her and build her up to be a strong woman who has a drive and wants to grow in her career. But that's something that's really important to talk about when we're talking about women in the workforce, because a lot of us are mothers and a lot of us do have that societal expectation on us as well. So I just want to talk about that with you all a little bit, whether you all might be mothers or not, just how that could play a part in, where we're at today with balancing motherhood and our careers.
Yeah, it is a balance, but whether it's motherhood or relationships or family, we all have those balances, whatever our family and life dichotomy is. But yeah, I have 2 daughters, and it has been great to hopefully be an example for them and all young women and their friends. They're both, they're at Arizona State, they're both in sororities. So like their friends are also like my daughters. A lot of the young girls are like adopted, just from being like mentors. But it's great. And I talk to them a lot, and you'll see a lot of this on social media and TikTok about what independence really means. And I think it's so, so important for young women to understand that, in my opinion, financial independence is the only independence. You're not really independent unless you are financially independent. And women really need to be in charge of their own careers and their own finances and their own financial future, so that they can always be in charge of their decisions and never be in a situation where they feel stuck or where they feel like they're having to, tolerate anything that they shouldn't be in a position to tolerate. So I really, more than anything, try to instill that in my daughters and all their college age friends, that you'd be surprised how many people still talk about getting your Mrs. degree and finding that rich guy, that that professional athlete. I'm like, ladies, you've got and I also think that there's no better satisfaction than earning it yourself. And instilling that into the younger generation of women, I think, is really important. There's a lot of weird things going on in our country regarding women and women's rights and, women's freedoms right now. And so I think, protecting those freedoms and making sure that we do so for future generations is critical.
I don't have any children, so but one thing I will say is that I was in a conversation recently with my industry colleagues, and they were talking about maternity leave, and that the younger generation has I think we kind of pigeonhole the younger generation into believing that they have, they want X number of vacation days, they want flexibility and so forth. So they're struggling with maternity leave for the younger staff because they're looking at it as, well, I didn't have that when I was in the industry, when I was working and becoming a mom. So they're trying to juggle what that looks like and being understanding, but also having the expectations of you're an employee and what does that look like?
That's a really good point. I think it's interesting as also in a different place where I have a young family. I have a son who is 7.5 and my daughter is 2.5. And I've always been very career driven, and it's just who I am, and it's a part of my identity. And so what you've said, Kristen, very much resonates with me. And as I think about raising both my son and my daughter, I think a lot about my identity and boundary setting. And that piece is really important to me. So just because I have kids does not mean I'm going to give up my career, because that's who I am. And so it's also setting expectations and boundaries of my family to let them know that this is what it is. And this is the example that I'm going to set. And it's really important. And I want my kids to see that. And I want them to know that they have opportunities for them both equally. And that piece is really important because I'm the youngest of 6, 3 boys, 3 girls. And yeah, it's a big family. We're a Brady Bunch family. But I'm first generation, and both of my parents came from India and Bangladesh. But what they did was they did the same exact thing that I've now done for my kids, is treat them equally. Mm-hmm. So that piece is also really important from a gender perspective, making sure that opportunity in a family is equal, to the best extent it can be. And what I tell my kids every night is, one, that they're extraordinary and they have to believe in themselves, and to dream big, because if you limit yourself early on, there's so many things that you're limiting yourself to. So dream big. And I think that piece is also really important, both, one, being very aware of who you are and your identity and what you're willing to compromise and not compromise, and then instilling those beliefs in your kids as well.
I love all of that. I'm like, I wish I had people telling me that when I was younger. I'm glad I'm hearing it now.
I was raised by a single mom, and so I kind of watched her struggle to find her, identity in the workspace and kind of do whatever it took to make ends meet and put food on the table. And I think that, helped shape, the importance of finding that career opportunity and finding your identity and what you want to do and being successful at it. So Kristen, I love what you said about teaching that to, your kids and your kids' friends. And I think it's super important. And I feel very lucky to have found an industry where we do have space to highlight, the sacrifices that, women have made. And, a lot of people who are planning trips to our destinations are women. Like, if you think about it, no matter how far, we were struggling, my mom always tried to plan a vacation, and the girlfriend's usually the one planning the trip and the boyfriend just packs the bag. So I think that was, something cool to see and highlight, and an interesting frame as well.
We talked about our mentors, and now we're talking about the advice that we're giving, our children and our daughters and their friends and all of that. What is a piece of advice that you all have received that's really stuck with you?
So one of my favorite pieces of advice, and it's weird, so prepare yourself. You have to understand the context, because so much of what we do in the DMO world is out of our control. Our funding is out of our control in many cases. The way our board reacts to things, politics. What happens in our destination. I've been in situations where legislation passes and people are boycotting the destination, and I think as DMO leaders, we take on so much of that responsibility. And oftentimes our conferences, especially at the CEO level, will be focused around what keeps you up at night, what do you lose sleep over. And so I was talking to one of my mentors on Long Island incredible person. And he said, listen, because I was venting about like, I can't believe this is happening or they're doing, and he goes, you have to care, but not too much. So understanding in other words, and it's hard to, that's why I say it's weird. You don't tell someone not to care too much because it is our lives. It is what we dedicate our lives to. But understanding that certain things are out of your control and you can only do the best job you can do, and put your best foot forward and do the hard work. You know, I always say that there's no shortcut to doing the hard work. However, it's just so important to make sure that you understand at the end of the day, it's a job. Your life and your health, and those things are the priority. You can do your best, but don't let it consume you, because there are certain things that are just out of your control.
For me, it's not necessarily a piece of advice. It's a quote, and it's a longer quote, but the summary of it is assume positive intent. And so I look at that as, going back to Kristen talking about, the board giving you questions or people asking things. I look at it now as an opportunity if I'm faced with a difficult question or what appears to be something confrontational, to look at it as an opportunity to educate. And I've told my team this because we all get a little defensive when someone's like, well, what are you doing for the restaurants? Or what are you doing for this? And instead of being defensive and coming at it where this is this, and this, look at it as an opportunity to educate about all that we're doing in our efforts and how that impacts the community, the businesses, and so forth. So I've kind of taken that from both personally and professionally, and it's defused situations where it's like, okay, and now this is like, let me share something with you, versus coming at it as I'm defending what our work is.
It's really interesting because we never planned this, but what I'm going to say now, it builds upon what you both have said. A long time ago, I got advice of, sometimes we go so fast and we're just going, going, going. Sometimes we have to, when we speed up, we have to slow down, and take that moment to just kind of the pause and reflect moment to say, I'm going really fast. Is what I'm doing with intent? Is what I'm doing, does it make sense? And question yourself of like, when you slow down, take that deep breath and say, what's the purpose of what it is that I'm doing? And so I think a lot about that now. We move pretty fast at DI, and I sometimes have to take that pause to say, okay, is what we're doing, what's the real outcome? What are we trying to achieve? Is this the right thing that we need to be doing, as opposed to just doing it? So I think it's interesting because it really just does build upon what you've said, Kristen and Wendy. And I've also learned in my, I'm a yoga instructor as well, and I used to teach on Capitol Hill in DC, of all places. And one of the a piece of advice that my yoga teacher told me, because I used to teach on Monday nights and Wednesday nights, and you could feel the tension and the energy in that room. But what she said, similar to what you said, Kristen, is that you can feel all that energy, but you cannot take it home with you. So do not bring that stuff with you. You keep it in that room, and because you can't absorb it. So that very much, I thought about that when you brought that up, Kristen.
Yeah, and I think it's being reactive, proactive. And I think we get that stress when we're feeling like we're reacting versus being proactive. And assuming positive intent is like people come at you with questions, right? And so they're just not knowledgeable about all of the efforts you're doing or the situation that you're in. So you just have an opportunity to be proactive in your approach instead of reactive.
I love that. I think it's very timely right now too, because we're moving at 1,000,000 miles a minute with all the changes in the digital space and, things we've chatted about earlier, just with, financial and legislative changes. So I think, sometimes everyone's like, well, what are we doing? What are we doing? What's the standard? What do we need to be focusing on? And we're not taking a second to kind of figure out the path in a way that's going to be most beneficial in the long term. Well, kind of going off the advice piece, I would love if you guys wouldn't mind sharing a piece of advice for any young women who are starting in whether our industry or, early in their careers, to take away from this episode today?
I'll go. I think for me, and we touched upon before the interview actually started about just having a period of time in my career where it was a bit tumultuous and I was unemployed more than I was employed in a 3-year stretch. And I was given advice, just leave the travel and tourism industry. There's other opportunities out there. And to be tenacious, to believe in yourself and to stay your course if that's what you truly want to be in, you'll find a way back and to not deviate simply because that's what you feel like you should do under the current circumstances.
Awesome, Wendy. So true. There's so many things when it comes to looking back at our careers, right? Never give up. Never give up. And don't let other people define you. Know your value and what your dreams are. And if you have a dream, and you, again, put in the hard work, I don't want there to miss that work ethic in future generations, because I do think it's important. You don't just graduate and get the title and get the salary and get the trips and get, it's not just about the perks. It really, and when you do the hard work and then you receive the results, it is, in my opinion, so much more gratifying than, I always use the analogy when my daughters turned like 16, and there are some lovely parents that would give them the keys to the shiny, brand new, luxury car. And that's fantastic if you have the ability to do that. My daughter's always got like the 13-year-old car that they would name that may or may not start. It adds character, it adds grit, and it gives you something to look forward to. If everything's handed to you right out of the gate, then how do you achieve, and how do you grow, and how do you strive? So, really just following your dreams, but putting in the hard work and never giving up. It's really important. And I think Wendy and myself and Sophia, we're all true living examples of that.
Absolutely. I think a few things. One, careers are not linear. And I think that's really important. So aim towards, what you want to be, dream big, but it's not going to be linear, and that's okay. And that's probably better that way, because failure is going to happen. Nobody talks about failure enough, but those are such learning moments. And I think sometimes I look back on my career, and it's been a really interesting journey. And there are times that things were hard. I didn't have a job at one point. I got into an accident. It was just all these things happened. And I thought, why is this happening to me? And I look back, and those were turning moments to help me grow, to help me think differently, to innovate. And so never give up. That's really important. And the other piece I think a lot about is passion and purpose. I've always made sure that whatever I've done in my career, it's with passion and purpose, because as hard as it can be sometimes, it doesn't feel like a job because I love it so much. So I don't dread waking up in the morning saying, oh, what do I have to do today? And even if I do, I know why I'm doing it. And that has always been my North Star.
I'll just throw in one more thing, Kaylee, I was looking at Wendy on the screen. Also, I think it's so important for us as women to surround ourselves with other positive people, men or women or friends, but people that are really going to root for your success. Wendy was the first person that knew when I got the Chicago job. And a lot of people told me, why would you even go for that? It's never going to happen. You hear a lot of negativity out there sometimes. And I had just gotten off the phone and I was at a conference, ran into Wendy, and having your longtime friend like literally shed tears for you and for your success, that is the kind of people that you need to surround yourself with, the people that believe in you and that are going to support you and help you navigate those times when you are going to come across naysayers and people that don't know your ability or don't understand. And just to really to make sure that the people that who you surround yourself with does matter.
Yeah. And just one other thing. Yeah, I've shed a few tears around Kristen, in joy and in sadness. But longtime friends. Just going back to recognizing the hard times and the challenges, I think what has gotten me through all of that and to where I'm at now is having that inner perspective and learning and really looking at yourself. And while we all face challenges, and I've been fired for and laid off, but looking at what role I played in that and how I can be better the next time around and not be in that situation, or if I am in that situation, how I can handle things differently. So always having that inner perspective and not taking, oh, it's just a bump in the road, but not really reflecting on it and your role in that. Because whether, it's 100% it's never 100% one person's fault.
Absolutely. Yeah, kind of going back to what all of you said, during COVID in 2020, I was actually working at Brand USA. So I was in Washington, D.C. And then when COVID happened, I decided to move back to my home state of Florida and, had to leave Brand USA and, got out of the industry for a while just because it was COVID and not many places in the industry were hiring at the time. And I just always knew I wanted to come back. So, like you were saying, Sophia, is just to stay persistent on that. And thankfully was able to do that, obviously, coming into Simple View. And I have lots of great friends that I still have from Brand USA and from when I was at Visit Florida before that, in the industry that were, rallying behind me and supporting me. And when I got hired here, Sam Keithley was like my number one champion and supporter at Simple View. So just really lucky to have had great friendships blossom out of this industry. And, Wendy and Kristen, you guys were just saying how you guys have been friends forever and have been through a lot of things together. And I think that's so special that we can form those really intimate bonds with one another.
Yeah, my Destinations international journey was all about the friendships I've made along the way.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know we're getting a little bit close to time, so I wanted to see if anyone had any last thoughts or takeaways for anyone listening. I know we heard a lot about, being a strong woman in this industry, our career journeys, and kind of, had a lot of themes of resilience, independence, and just kind of, working through challenges in a way that brings you out on top. So, is there any last minute thoughts for anyone here?
Well, I'll just kind of summarize because it's so interesting. I've been listening to my two great friends, Sophia and Wendy, and loving your feedback. And it's funny because you both mentioned something that I'm going to wrap up with is at Choose Chicago and our organization, we have what we call the 4 Ps. And it's passion, purpose, performance, which is that hard work, and positivity. And I really think if you move forward, always thinking about those things, you have to be passionate about what you do. We spend too much time in our organizations and our lives that you have to really believe in what you're doing and having the purpose, understanding the value of what you contribute and what this industry contributes, working hard to perform. And then, like Wendy said, always staying positive. Every now and then when we meet our goals, I'll throw in perseverance. But I think, that's just the summary of, I think, what's going to get us through together in this industry and drive success.
Well, I know we appreciate getting to, share some space with you guys today. And, you guys are people that I'm going to speak for both of us that we look up to in the industry. And I hope that anyone listening today, can take away something from this. And I really appreciate the time and the beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much.
really fun. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I don't necessarily like the word mentor, in the sense that I kind of feel like that's a job, and I'm always happy to share experiences and share perspective on situations. So if there's a young person out there who just wants to run something past, I'm always open to sharing experiences and listening.
We have a mentor platform now at DI.
That's why I said I don't like the word mentor, because now I feel like I'm like Got a
We have a
title.
mentor. Well, I think, if I'll do a plug for this, but we realize the importance of connection in a community and just learning from each other. And we revamped the platform so we could have more natural interaction than just the stiff mentor mentee space. So to your point, Wendy, that could be a place where someone asks a question, and if you feel like there's a place for it, then you respond. It's not so stiff. So to your point, 100% understand that.
That was definitely one of my favorite conversations that we've had to date on the Layover Live.
That was incredibly special. I know I took a lot out of it, and it was just really great to make some space to sit down and hear some stories and have some beautiful conversations. So,
Yeah, I've had a lot of really great women, not only women, I've had some great men mentors as well, but since we are focused on women, I'll focus on them just throughout my career. And starting with my first boss at Visit Florida when I first got into the industry, Amanda, she was amazing. I was pretty fresh out of college, and she was so smart. Just even simple things like, here's how you write an email, just things that I'm like, I just never really knew. And that's not something that you typically get taught. And she would teach me those types of things. So that was always something really special, just helped me build my professionalism and how to actually work in an office coming right out of college. So she's somebody who's very near and dear to me, and we still keep in touch today, 10 years later, which is really special. And then I did mention on the episode, Sam Keithley from Simple View was a great advocate for me as soon as I started in the role and, supporting me. I actually started at Simple View 3 months before my daughter was born. So I was here for a couple months, went on maternity leave, and then was like balancing being a first-time mother and pretty much still a new job at that point. And she was just such a resource for me for everything, whether it was motherhood questions or work questions. She's always been great, and always really thankful for her. And then I do want to shout out Corinne from Traverse City. I know that we both adore her, and she was another person that I met 4 years ago when I started at Simple View and was one of my first clients. And, now that we're not working together day to day, because I'm in a different role, she still just is there for me. She always, supports us, and she's super supportive of the Layover. So Corinne, I hope you're listening. I just want to give you a special shout out. Every time we get to see her in person, I'm obsessed with her. I want to be her. She is just amazing inside and out. And she's been really special for me. How about you?
we love Corinne. I did mention it, but Cheryl Kilday has been such a big, big mentor to me. She's actually the reason I'm at Simple View. I've never had a boss be like, hey, do you want to expand? What do you want to do? And let's get you there. So that was just amazing. And, she's been a great, person to go to for any advice in the industry and has always been a real big North Star for me. I look up to her a lot. Going along with that, Erin Graham, who is also at Destination North Myrtle Beach, just really supported me professionally, personally, and I always know when I need advice, I can go to her. I also want to shout out Melissa Oropezzo. She is just a great example of, a strong woman advocate in this field, and I look up to her so much, and she is amazing. But also my great friend Kaylee, doing this with you and, working alongside you has been so incredible, and you inspire me every day, and I'm so grateful for the time we get to work so closely together.
Thank you. That's very kind. And yeah, I love that women in this industry really do stick together. I have friends from previous industry roles who are also still in the industry, maybe in other companies and positions, and we're still best friends, like bridesmaids in their wedding. And it's just something really special. And, you and I also have just, when I came to visit you a couple of weeks ago, we have just built these bonds, and I think that they last a lifetime, but also is always great to have a champion and supporter And if, you're listening and maybe you haven't found that in the industry, you should sign up for the Destination International Mentorship Program, or come and speak with us or some of the other women who just came on the podcast.
Well, we'd always love to hear some more stories and make space for conversations like this. So if you have an inspiring story you want to share, please either, leave a comment or reach out to one of us. And we'd love to give some space in the future to share more of these conversations. I think it's really important. And I think that, there's a lot of takeaways that we can all learn and implement to grow from each other.